Africa has the biggest young population in the world. Who's gonna train these people? Who's gonna place them or find them jobs and provide them skills that are really relevant for today's economy? And what we're trying to do at Gomycode is make education affordable, make it shorter in terms of time, make it really relevant. And the third thing, make it really job focused. We want to build a Pan-African company. We want to bring everyone on the board. We go big or we go home.
Yahya Bouhlel is an impressive Tunisian founder. At 16 years old, he started working with American startups in Silicon Valley. At 18, he launched his company in Tunisia. And today, his startup is present in 35 cities and 8 countries in Africa. They aim to help 200 million Africans develop their digital skills. In this episode, he explains step by step how to build and succeed in Africa.
Teachers are Gomycode. We're not simply a content company, we're a teacher company. We even had some ultimate. You don't fundraise from someone you don't know. Fundraising requires relationship building. There's 3 futures of AI, and the path we choose determines our future, basically.
Actually, I didn't ask you last time what's your background, because we were talking about this, but you didn't tell me what it is. So what's this background and where is it?
So the background, so this is, this background, right? This is basically Yaba in Lagos, Nigeria. And Yaba is really the heartbeat of Lagos. And when you look at the map of Lagos, Yaba is really the center kind of the city. And it's a very densely populated neighbor or like city in Lagos. It's one of the biggest actually. And this is one of the schools that we have, the biggest school that we have actually at Gomycode. It's a 5-floor building. There's a big church next to it. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, I see it.
So a lot of people recognize the building actually because it's famous. It's next to a famous church in Yaba.
Okay.
And on a main road basically. And I think we took this picture with a drone 2 years ago when we opened the school, and I really like it because it's you can see the whole city behind, and there's a bridge also that you can see here. Up.
I don't see it.
There's a bridge behind basically.
Okay, so nice.
Yes. So yeah, that's the story of the background. I always use it.
I think that's a good story to understand what you do. We already understood that you're in Africa and that you're in the education space. But Yahya Bouhlel, welcome to the podcast.
Merci.
I'm very, very to have you on the podcast. You're the founder of Gomycode, so now everyone knows it, as it's written on the background. An education tech platform, a startup. I'm very happy to have you on the podcast. I think today we're going to talk about many subjects, startups, of course, education, building a startup, especially in Africa, and many more subjects. But I would love to begin with this. You have a personal website on yahyabouhlel.com, and you wrote that you want to fix the broken education system in Africa and the Middle East. And I would love to understand a little bit and if you can expand a little bit more on this, so we can really understand what's behind your mission and why you're building Gomycode.
Yeah. So really, thank you so much, Mohammed. Really excited to be in the Next Wave podcast. Myself, I'm a vivid listener of a podcast, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's such a privilege to be in a podcast and be able to share my learnings and my thoughts also with everyone out there on the internet.
Thank you.
And it's really also proud to have a regional podcast in the region that we get to be in and also listen to. It's really a national pride that we have, a regional pride.
Thank you, my friend.
So on the mission of the company, so the mission clearly resonates with me and my co-founder. We both of us we came back. Actually, I came back from Palo Alto, and me and my brother came back from London. And we teamed up to start Gomycode, which is based in Tunis, and really a truly Pan-African company. And we really had conviction to build for Africa because we really understand and we really we have a strong sentiment actually to build these countries where we come from. And we think that the education is broken in our countries. Just to give you a sense, so clearly the problem statement really evolved through the years. We started with a very simple model. We started with a summer camp, actually, the first cohorts and the programs, and really evolved into a much rich, let's say, program that is not just a summer camp, but also like a proper school that provides upskilling, reskilling, opportunities, career transformations for professionals, for university graduates. And we even provide today programs at a master's degree level, for example, which is around accreditation. But the core foundational problem today is that, one, you have a big population of university graduates that end up unemployed. It's 1/3 today of university graduates in Africa do not find jobs. So that's 3 million students a year. So there's 9 million graduates. 1/3 is unemployed, basically. So these are highly educated or educated people in many times, but are not working. The second thing is we live in a really fast evolving world. So the progress of technology is exponential. It's not linear. And especially now with AI, the trajectory of growth is really exponential. And it's really hard to predict the trajectory of technology. So that usually tend to impact curricula and programs and knowledge being taught at the level of schools. So we end up with a lot of universities and schools teaching really old curriculum and really old programs and technologies. So there's a notion of outdated programs. And I mean, so this is quite universal across the region. Like all universities are almost like this. The third, which is a problem, what I see, which is education in many cases not accessible, like good quality education, because it's expensive actually to fund your education and pay for your education. One, it's expensive in terms of price, and two, it's long. So it takes 5 years to basically from 3 to 5 years to train someone. So if you take time as a scale, it takes 5 years for university or 3 years to train someone and find them a job or place them within the job. So that's considered like an important commitment of time and resources from parents, from a student. And what we do as Gomycode is you have all these three problems basically in scale, right? So this impacts millions of students across the region. And what we're trying to do at Gomycode is make education affordable in terms of money, make it shorter in terms of time. So the Gomycode scale is like 6 months, 8 months, a year, 15 months, 2 years maximum. Make it really relevant to what's happening today. So very on-date programs, technologies. And the third thing, make it really job-focused and make sure you focus on placing students, finding them jobs, training them with, placing them with, and matching them with employers and companies. And this is what we do really at scale today. Like
I would love to double click on something that you said, which is very interesting. So you're speaking about the problems, and actually I saw also a talk where you were saying that you think that a lot of economic impact in Africa and Middle East is downstream of young people having strong digital skills.
Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit on this? Why you think that such digital skill can impact on an economic level? And what do you think about this?
Yeah, so the idea is basically much often, like basically we grew up in very closed economies. So, growing up in Tunisia, I've seen it like in my early years, but it's the same for students in Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal. We grew up in very closed economies, and this closure usually comes from laws, from regulations, from, the Tunisian dinar is not a convertible currency, for example, today. So most Tunisians, they don't have access to USD accounts as of now. They cannot, buy for like online services. They cannot consume online products. So it's very closed. They cannot trade internationally, or in many cases they can, but there is limitations, and from admin standpoint, it's quite complicated. So in many cases, we grew up really close in these closed economies, and the notion of opportunity is usually limited to what the local market is providing. So you usually get a job at the local market, local companies, and we really rely and depend on this local economy. until you decide to move or reallocate somewhere else. And there we have big brain drain. I take the example of Tunisia. Today, almost 1/3 of the population is abroad, basically. And many people leave actually their countries to look for these economic opportunities in Europe, for example, in France. And we think that the opportunity that we have right now with digital skills and tech is really one of its kind, because for the first time, you can be based in Tunis, you can be based in Lagos, in Casablanca, in Nairobi, but first working with international teams from all over the world, building value across the world, building software, making money in USD and foreign currency, contributing to open software, open source software. And just the economic opportunity for the first time is a global economic opportunity. It's not a local economic opportunity. And that's a really strong incentive for a lot of people to stay in their country, simply because they can be based anywhere in the world. And with the AI right now, they can be very competitive to talents from all across. And that's a really exciting opportunity for a lot of young people, basically, to be able to contribute globally in this new digital economy.
From Tunis or from Lagos or from Casablanca.
From Casablanca, from Lagos, so a lot of our students actually join Gomycode for this really idea. Is basically they can really improve their economic life, not necessarily relying on this local economy, but part of the global economy, but from their home countries. Yeah. And this is a first, like it was not the case many years ago. So COVID really helped accelerate remote works. There's a lot of platforms today like remote.com.
Did you see a big shift? You started building Gomycode, I think, eight years ago. Yeah. Did you see a big shift in terms of people living in Tunis or Lagos and working with, I don't know, American startups or European companies or companies abroad?
Yeah. So it was very slow when I started building Gomycode back in 2017, 18, 19. And really, COVID really helped basically grow remote work and remote opportunities. And really, COVID really helped accelerate this remote transition and really helped companies be able to hire from all over the world. So that's really the first phase, which is COVID. But after, companies had really to readjust a lot after COVID in terms of count, in terms of capex, in terms of investment. And hiring actually people from abroad is a cost-efficient way, actually. So a lot of companies continued to hire. And after there was a wave of companies like Deal and like remote.com that make it really easy to contract anywhere in the world. So right now, if you want to go and like contract someone from Tunisia, you don't need to create a company in Tunisia. You don't need to do...
It's very easy.
It's very easy. You can go through Deal or remote.com and you can hire someone. And it takes basically a few weeks to set up a contract and hire someone. And this is really all recent, only the past few years. So yeah, I mean, definitely. There was a big transition in the past 8 years. Yeah. So I mean, so there is another also massive problem, which is, opportunity problem, which is we think that millions actually in Africa and in the Middle East need training on tech skills urgently. So the size, just to give you a sense, so Africa is the biggest young population in the world. So it's the biggest 14 to 30 years old concentration in one continent. So that's 200 million people, which is a lot of people. So to think about it, who's going to train these people? Who's going to place them or find them jobs and provide them skills that are really relevant for today's economy? Is Africa's biggest problem, basically, in the next 50 years to come. So you have this younger population, but also you have the class of workers that needs upskilling on digital education. And so the education is a really
it's a very interesting of like bottom-up economic impact, starting from young people and with skills and maybe contributing to the global economy and seeing a lot of economic impact downstream. Okay, let's start in the beginning, Yahya. when did you write your first line of code? When did you start working on your first tech product?
So I think from what I remember, like basically I think it was around 12 years old. So yes, 12 years old was really the first line of code for me. And the story actually is really funny and interesting because when I first started using the computer, it was pre-internet era. So we didn't really had internet when I got our first computer. And the first thing that I did basically, just so you have context and you understand like how I ended up writing my first line of code, is basically my dad works at a national company, like a public company. And at that time, this public company was a very good, let's say, company, very like a profitable company. Also, it was in a really strong era of the country. So it was one of the first companies that introduced personal computers for their teams, basically. So my dad got a computer from work, actually, from a personal computer from work. And he used to take home the computer with him and leave it on his office. So I would start typically like after work, I'll go and like start using the computer. And this is before internet. So the only thing that I had on the computer was these pre-installed games by Microsoft at that time, where Microsoft gives you like 1 or 2 coins that you can use to play the pre-installed games for like 20 minutes every day. So that was the limit. You put the coin, you have 20 minutes, you can play. And after, so that was the first thing that I did. And I think I did that for 6 or 7 months, basically. I would sneak in every day, use those 20 minutes, 2 coins to play the game. The very same, like 4 games or something. And when we installed the internet, it was a year after. The first thing that I did basically with the internet, I started searching like, how can I play more games, basically. I mean, I was 11 or 12 years old. So my first thinking, I remember this, like we got the computer, I go on like Internet Explorer and like, I'm playing this game. I want to play more of this game. How can I do it? So eventually, I mean, I started reading more about, and at that time, like online games, like just starting. So we didn't have a lot of online games. And so I ended up like basically being very curious about video games. And that was really fascinating, like a design system for me in a sense, and like really fascinating product. And then I didn't believe that humans could build like this kind of not real or 3D visualization of like reality, but not reality, like some kind of alternative reality, but in a computer. And that was really inspiring for me. And I was really excited by this because I said, actually, there is no limit behind video games. You can do anything. Actually, you can create anything. And that kind of non-limit approach was really exciting for me. I was like, I can build anything. That's really exciting. So actually end up like searching on the internet, how one, can I make games? So that was the thinking. I want to make games. I had a few ideas. And 2, I really like the game that I played on my computer. So I was like, I want to play more of this game. So I ended up learning a bit about reverse engineering and like reverse engineering that game. And like basically playing infinite amount of times using that game. And that got me into like also learning how to build viruses and backdoors and be more interested in that aspect of like the internet, which is basically hacking and all. And that was also like a really interesting, because for me, you had 2 options. You either like you learn how to build a virus and like spread it, or you learn how to build a game. And for me, both were really like interesting in a sense because they both about creative problem solving. So you're like doing something creative.
Yeah. Tell me more about the hacking part and the viruses part. How did you understand it or got interested in this kind of stuff, and why?
Yeah, so I mean, it basically came from the fact that I wanted to play this game. We didn't have a bank account or a credit account, and there was a limit. So I was really basically researching so much about how can I play more the game. Eventually, I ended up learning about reverse engineering. It's basically a method to reverse engineer the software so you can
The software of the game and make it so you can play infinitely.
play infinitely. I figured out that you can do actually this to a lot of software, to a lot of games. So it's not just games, it's also software and all the pet software. And I always I mean, before like SaaS and all of these premium softwares, they were like a black box basically. Like you needed money to use them, and
you have to buy the license and you have it until they put something new. And actually, SaaS is a very interesting invention because now we're used to pay subscription, but actually people didn't pay for subscription; they only paid once.
It was a one-time fee, and you get a license, and it's for lifetime, basically, which is crazy. Yeah, I mean, so I was really fascinated, but also at the same time, you did not have this notion of like freemium or like free models. Most softwares where you need to buy, and I end up also reading so much about like hackers because that was a really interesting like role for me, like, you know, white hat hackers, black hat hackers, and the difference, and learning about different hacking groups. And I ended up reading a lot of books about reverse engineering and social engineering, and it was really interesting because I mean, hacking, it's not just tech. When like this is something you learn from when you learn hacking, is it's not just about understanding of technology or the internet or computers, or it's so much about a social understanding, you know, about understanding about habits and people and society. So I ended up reading so much, for example, about how, like, for example, the internet works and how telecommunication system works and how companies they work and how they communicate between each others. And like, you learn so much about microeconomies. And so, I mean, that was also really insightful and interesting for me. I was 12 or 13. So
even I think human psychology and how we use the softwares and everything.
Yeah.
Is there something that you learned from this time, and I know it's a long time ago, you were 12 or 13 years old, in the reverse engineering space or in the hacking space, that is still beneficial today in your work?
Yeah, I mean, the most important parts are knowledge around different techniques and tactics of hacking. So, for example, like I really know pretty much all the methods of penetration and like hacking and pen testing and like phishing, like DDoS attacks. Like, so I had a really strong foundation on like how the sniffing, like all the different hacking techniques that are even still relevant up to today, and like all the different types of viruses. And so, I mean, that keeps me like it's pretty safe, you know. So I never got hacked in my life, for example, or like never got lost any code or soft or like an account, or so that sets you kind of in the right direction. I'm very strict also with the security and safety at Gomycode, and we never got like hacked or attacked or at Gomycode, so that set up like really good foundation in a sense. But yeah, it's mostly about like, you know, staying safe on the internet and really understanding the different techniques that hackers can use, you know, to attack a company or users or and yeah, I mean we have a cybersecurity course today, like we have an advanced cybersecurity course, and where we teach a lot of these things actually today. And I mean, clearly a lot of things changed, like since I started to now. I mean, when I started, I mean, it's like completely different infrastructure and like completely different setup basically, and it has nothing to do with what exists today, you know, in terms of hacking. So it's really two completely different worlds. Yeah.
So yeah,
when I started, the big thing was really, I remember keyloggers, which like these softwares that you build that can really record the keyboards, take screenshots, really record any input point basically
on the laptop. Okay.
On the laptop, and like basically send that through like email or like SMS or through different communication techniques basically. And that was a big thing because that was the way to hack a computer basically, through keyloggers. And you had USB keyloggers, and you had different types of keyloggers, like in images and videos. You had web keyloggers, you had desktop keyloggers, and We call them backdoors also, like it was a Trojan backdoor or something.
I think it's a very interesting space, and a lot of people in the software industry have a little background in this space. So yeah, you started building products at 13. It's very, very young. Sounds like a cliche of the software entrepreneur, and it's a very nice story. So 13, 14 years old, and what is very, very interesting, and I think I never saw this anywhere, is that at 16, you were hired to work in the Silicon Valley at a startup.
Yeah.
And you went there at 16 to work there. Can you tell us this story and tell me more about this?
Yeah. So my hacking journey did not last. It lasted maybe like a year and a half. Eventually, like, okay, my parents, I guess my dad and my brother did some work with me, and like they were like, okay, maybe you should learn something to do something more useful, like build an app or software. So the natural transition was like, okay, I'm gonna make like websites to like online games, basically. I started scrapping a lot of games from all over the internet, changing them, recoding them. There was a mix of like still scrapping, so you're still like hacking a lot of what's existing on the internet, but eventually I started making games later on. And at some point I run a lot of like online games websites. I'm sure when you used one of those when you were a kid, you type like free online games and you have free online games. So I read a few websites like those. Eventually I also run like blog websites, like,
So you built a website with several games on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of the websites are still exist, but they're like broken and like, maybe 15 years old or something. But so there's this website called Yahya Games. I think it's still running. I can show it if I can share the screen.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. So I mean, this is like a website that I built maybe like 15 years ago or something now, like when I was 13.
It's still online. It's great.
It's still online. I don't know how it's still online. It's crazy. But it's called Yahya Games, basically, and you can see like the online games on the website.
And there were categories, and you could, for example, you could choose the category, and you had several games.
Yeah, exact. And I mean, you still have the about page. I think this is linked to my Google account, so that's why the image is updated. But you can see like the English is not like the best. Like, is a young entrepreneur running a number of sites from his living room. He's a blogger, gamer, and a developer.
But already an entrepreneur and startup mentality, no?
Yeah, already see like entrepreneurs, even many entrepreneurs at the same time.
So entrepreneurs in your mind.
Yeah. So I mean, I run a lot of websites like this, and I run also a lot of tutoring websites, like,
So if you listen on Spotify and you don't understand what you're saying, you can look in YouTube. So I think it would be better.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, eventually, so I started also building real games with like Unity and engines and learning how to do like code basically with Java. I used the website extensively called Site de Zero at that time. Now it's Open Classroom actually, but before it used to be Site de Zero. It was one of the biggest French
Site de Zero had a lot of knowledge about a lot of things, not only coding, I think.
Not only coding. So Site de Zero was very much referenced on the internet. So whenever you Google something, you see Site de Zero. It's like it was like Wikipedia basically at that point for me. And what really helped is that after the revolution in 2011 in Tunisia, we basically half of the websites were closed, like YouTube, like all the forums, so all of them were open. So you have all of this like open library and knowledge. And I think maybe we're too open actually, because there was so much actually, and there was so much like many forums that were actually not allowed in other countries. So there was so much open actually, including like things like, so much about hacking, for example, was open that I wouldn't consider it like very safe basically today. And so yeah, I mean, so basically you have all of this open knowledge and open internet, and that really helped me like build basically more things. And I remember by 15, like I had a GitHub account, I had few games, I had a few websites, I was coding, I had few projects. I was doing a lot of like good, I was doing a lot of good stuff. And I was at school at high school at the same time. So I always had my high school and like my parallel life on high school where like I would go home and like open my computer and like, by the way, I'm like, I think 5-6 computers deep, basically. I like screw up a lot of computers. I like messed up a lot of computers. People were like bringing me their computers to fix. Also, that was a thing. I was not fixing them all the time. Sometimes I couldn't fix them, or like I would crash or burn, basically. So I was doing a lot of stuff also on the side, basically. I was also a lot of, at that time, like, we used to have the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 and like the PSP, and like I was the one in the neighborhood who can like pre-install games on those.
And you were doing this with your brother or with friends, or it was like really a solo hobby, something that you liked, especially?
It was really like a solo hobby. It was completely complete solitude, basically. The only person that at some point like grew up a bit and like we were together is my cousin, who's 2 years younger, actually more like 4 years younger than me, actually. But he was young, but like he was also into he's actually a software engineer today, and he studies at X in Paris. And I always tell him that like I told him everything, when he was 10 years. I was 14, he was 10, so.
So yeah, okay. And how did you find like a job opportunity, an internship at 16 in the US, like from Tunisia?
Yes. So basically, what happened is that my brother, who's 8 years older than me, he's based in Paris at that time when I was 15. He was studying in Paris. He was doing prépa in Paris. So he was definitely more well informed than me, and like he was following a lot of trends and following a lot of medias, and so he heard also about like what I was doing. He heard about like me like building stuff, and like he hears so much, from my parents, and I think he wanted to support that in a way and like really endorse that. And like he found an article one day on Harvard Business Review about this company that is looking to hire game developers from all over the world, called Make School. At that time, it's called Make Game with Us. And he sent me that article, and I really was interested. I mean, at that age, I had no clue. I was like, okay, let's do it. And I applied for the opportunity, and they were like, we like your story, post-revolution, Tunisia, younger kid who built software from Tunis, from his living room. And we have like a position for someone to come and experiment around building games and use this game engine called Sprite Builder. And like basically the founder really likes my story, and the founder dropped out basically from MIT to launch this company. So he was himself really young. He was 22, I think. And they were like, come in the summer and spend 3-4 months and basically let's do it.
What is it to be what it's like to be 16 and to go to the US and to see like this new world of tech and everyone is into this stuff that you were passionate about, but alone. But now like everyone is writing code and everything. How was this experience?
It was very inspiring, but it was very intimidating, actually. So, I mean, I remember not being able to sleep for weeks and for a month because I was too excited all the time, so I couldn't sleep because I was too excited most of the times. And because it was really inspiring, because you're right, actually, like in Palo Alto, you know how like in our countries, like we want our kids to either be the next football player or the next maybe doctor, engineer. In Palo Alto, it's like they have Steve Jobs who grew up in the neighborhood, and they built Apple, and so the families, they want their kids to be the next Steve Jobs, and that's very much normalized. And so you can sense that actually in that environment. So it's a very competitive environment. There's a lot of smart people, very international environment, and you have all the big tech basically around. So it was very inspiring for me, and also very intimidating because I assumed that I knew a lot of things and learned a lot of things, and in my city, I was like really so ahead. But you go to Palo Alto and you're like nothing basically compared to all of these people. So it's really humbling. And when you're humbled at like 16 and 15, I think that's a bit crushing at the same time, but also you basically have so much grit basically to go and learn more and work hard. And so I remember that summer, like I basically didn't sleep because I was working and coding like 24 hours, 7 days. So I was coding like 16, 17 hours every day basically and sleeping. So I would code and sleep every day basically. Because in my mind, like I need to catch up on with these people basically. And what really also inspiring at that time is I was attending a lot of hackathons, so it was the start of hackathons. I was doing a lot of like big Ivy Leagues hackathons. I did the hackathon at Y Combinator called YC Hacks, and I remember we built basically like a game at the Y Combinator hackathon. At that time, basically, there was the president of Y Combinator was Sam Altman.
Yeah.
So Sam Altman came actually to our stand, and he played the game basically that we built, and he looked at us and he was like, you can build a game studio out of this app basically, out of this game basically, and like I was like, okay, the CEO of
Y Combinator.
Y Combinator is like telling us this, and I'm like 17 at that time. Wait, I'll show you. I have a picture of this actually.
Yeah.
So this is me basically when I was 16, and this is Sam Altman, and these are my friends basically, and we built this game at the hackathon. And he was playing the game basically, and he was like, "This is a great game. You should go fundraise." And
I know it.
I'm like, what is he saying? These are some of the hackathons also we attended. This is the office where I worked, like, and I spent a lot of time. It was a spread builder office.
And we can see the couch where you slept 8 hours after
exactly. This is me with the Seize the Data shirt. So I mean, so this is like a long time ago. It's like 30.
That's one of the first decks of Gomycode, no?
These decks, this is one of the first definitely decks of Gomycode, and really, this story helped me basically when I went back to Tunis. I was showing them these pictures, and I was like, listen, like I end up next to some Altman and like building these games and all, and these are the first cohorts actually of Gomycode. This is like the first cohort of Gomycode, the first session. It was really like I remember like we didn't have enough chairs and tables, so we extended with a plastic like table. But it was a demo day basically. We invited founders to give talks. Like this is the very first session of Gomycode basically, and this was I think one of the first deck or something like of Gomycode.
It's great that you still have this.
Yeah, very very early stage actually. And yeah, I'm 19, like pitching this basically. Yeah. So
I entered at startups, created, already have a great resume actually. Like at 19, interned at startups in Silicon Valley, Y Combinator startups, makes cool. No, it's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have like, you told us about this great anecdote of with Sam Altman. Is there another memory that you have of this experience? You also told me that you did this famous course, How to Start a Startup, at Stanford with Sam Altman. I don't know. Do you have like a memory of this time, an anecdote?
Yeah, I have a lot of memories because I actually met a lot of inspiring people. Like the founder of this company where I interned a bit. The founder, his name is Jeremy Rossman, and both of his parents were like the top 10 employees at Apple. Oh. So his mom was the personal assistant or something of Steve Jobs, and she helped design like the command button on the Apple keyboard. And he showed me, I saw his mom on the internet and all, and ended up meeting her in real life, And I ended up like hanging out with these people in real life, and that was really inspiring, when you meet the first 10 employees at Apple and you have a conversation with them. It was a French-American couple, and so they knew Tunis very well. They spoke French. They had a sense of like, Tunis in the world and my background. And also, so they were really welcoming, and, I ended up spending some time with them, and like, that was really also inspiring for me, at a young age. Also, I ended up also meeting re-meeting again with some admin through different events because it's a really small ecosystem. And at that time, some admin was doing a lot of like ecosystem building, I guess, like in 2014, 2015. And they were doing like a Y Combinator course at Stanford on how to start a startup. It was like an amazing course, actually. So actually, it's all recorded. So if you go on the internet and you put how to start a startup by Y Combinator, you find the whole course. And it's a course it's a course Y Combinator taught at Stanford, basically. And so the idea is to bring real operators from the real world, basically, including Paul Graham, including the founder of Airbnb, of Stripe. And basically they talk about all the challenges that face.
Yeah, and they share like a lot of great resources. You have startupschool.com, I think, or .org, I don't remember, but great resources. Okay.
So I ended up attending one of the, like, I attended a few lectures actually on campus. And that was basically the tipping moment for me to be really, because at that point, I really didn't understand what like really a startup is and how to start a startup. That was a really confusing aspect. And I only understood how to code something, but like to launch a startup or a company, it was not necessarily clear. And for me, that was really inspiring, actually, to go to one of those, to a few of those lectures and attend them on campus and like meet the people there and meet the, so I mean, that was the first time where I was introduced to startups properly in like a structured way. And at the same time, I was spending a lot of time between Tunis because I would go spend a lot of time in Tunis, go back to the US. And you know, when you spend a lot of time from Sousse and this environment, you start asking the big questions, which is like why it's like it's like this here and why it's different in our country, you know. So, and
yeah, like at this time, I want to understand what led you to start Gomycode. Was it something like I saw an ecosystem, very inspiring, a lot of energy, and I want to bring this here, and I want it to exist here? Is it something else? How did you go from these experiences in the valley to, okay, I'm gonna start a company, and this company is going to be in Tunis and not in the valley, because it was a possible thing for you to go there and maybe join a company or start a company.
Yeah.
And this company that I'm going to start in Tunis, it's going to be in the education space and everything.
Yeah. So I mean, so the thinking was like, for me, I saw a lot of young. So what really drove me is what really triggered actually this is the thinking of. There's a lot in Palo Alto. There's a lot of young people, very young people, you know, like 20 years old, 19, 21, 22, 23, and all, are raising millions and building products and launching initiatives and companies that have significant impact on the rest of the world and population. And that's a really exciting idea. And what I've seen is that when they're well mentored, when they're well funded, when they're well structured and supported, and there's an ecosystem around that tend to really happen, and that tend to have a really significant impact on the country, like at the GDP level, at the country level. And I would go back to Tunis and be like, there is nothing. Like we're not teaching young people and people about new technologies and product building and launching their own startups and projects, and it's not like we have less smart or less talented young people. It's just young people did not have the place, you know, to join and be. And so the idea that, you know, if we provide the right resources for a lot of young people in our countries, like mentorship, spaces, environment, technologies, and give them that, they can really build companies and they can really significantly impact their ecosystem. I mean, so the thinking was really like I was comparing. So I was comparing both ecosystems, both countries, both cities. And for me, it felt natural because in Tunisia, I felt solitude. So like I knew how to learn. I learned how to code. I built software. I felt I didn't have the environment around me. It's only until I went to the US And I was in the environment, I was like, okay, there's like so many people like me, why it's so different in Tunis. And I didn't really find the community and environment in Tunis that really supported me in that sense. So it's an attempt basically to replicate what I've seen in Tunis. So like a school with the spirit of Silicon Valley. So that's really the thing in my mind. Like I'm thinking about all of these things. And at the same time, my brother who just came back to Tunis, and he was opening a subsidiary of a French company, was doing open source software. And also he was looking to hire developers. He was looking to hire 50 developers. He was 28 at that time, so he was my age when he just got back to Tunis. So he was pretty young, and he used to work at Amazon in London. So I would come in the summer and like see him, and we start talking, and he's like, okay, I'm like trying to hire developers. Me, I'm like, like there's no really place for where we train and like we educate developers with the spirit of Silicon Valley, where it's product based, where it's expert led, where it's not traditional, and I started telling him about the technologies that we use, and he's like, no, companies use PHP here, like we don't use React, we don't use all these JavaScript frameworks or libraries, and we don't use these. And he was telling me about the tech stack of like the biggest companies, and I was like really surprised. I was like, these are really, really old. And at the same time, a lot of people heard about my story from my town and my neighborhood and from my school. So they started inviting me to these. At that time, they were doing a lot of small TED talks at schools, or like in Tunis, we had a movement of Bil events. I don't know if it's the case in Morocco. So it's Bil events, or like it was
maybe I just don't know it, but I don't know.
So I started basically attending those talks and like sharing with people my story, and like how I ended up like going to the US at 16 and 17, and like building this software and learning, and there was a really lot of appetite for a lot of young people. Basically, they were like, we want to learn that, we want to learn how to build a website, how to build a game, how to launch a product. And so I decided basically to take this summer off and basically reallocate to Tunis, and not start a company, but start a summer project. And for me, it was summer project in Tunis, just because there is this appetite, and Tunis is my country. I don't know Tunis. So much of it is fueled by FOMO, because the years after the revolution were really exciting years for us. And a lot of Tunisians were coming back to Tunis, and there was so much happening in Tunis. I was like, okay, I'm missing this. I want to be in Tunis this summer. And basically, after the summer, go back to the US and like do university and like work and like continue my life and become an American. For in my head is like the US is where I belong.
So that was the plan. You were 18.
That was the plan.
Yeah. In September, we're going to go to the US. Okay.
That was the plan, basically. So I basically moved to Tunis. At that time, my brother already moved, so I ended up living with him. So I mean, my brother was working at that time at his company, but he gave me my first ticket. Basically, it was, I think, $1,000 around, to basically, I mean, create the company, like rent a small office, put like $50 as a marketing budget, like just, utilities basically. And I set up the first cohort. Basically, it was a cohort of 35 students, and I was like, I'm gonna teach people what I do the best, which is how to build. The slogan was learn how to design, build and design and ship like a video game, basically. And that's what I did. I built the first learning platform, first curriculum. I hired 35 students. We do some of the marketing campaigns, and we launch the session at a space called Cogit. At the time, it was the first co-working space. And during that summer, the students had the best time of their lives, basically, that everyone hears about the experience. And there was like a big media push, basically, in Tunisia about this like company funded by this 19 years old who launched like this. And we didn't have a company yet at that time. It was just a summer camp, basically. And we ended up getting featured in the Huffington Post Maghreb, which is a big media at that time in Tunisia. And that gave a lot of visibility for the company, like enormous visibility. Like everyone were like resharing all, and it got to TV actually. that the website of Gomycode like basically blew up, and we received like 500 people telling us they want to be part of this, and
Okay,
I was like, okay,
it's
this
a
is
lot.
crazy. Like this is a lot actually. There's something here to do. So I'm like, okay, in the US they take gap years basically. So I'm gonna take a gap year before university. And my mom was, you crazy. My dad also. They were like, my parents were like, we don't do gap years in Tunisia. Like, what's gap year? Like,
What is it? What's this gap year?
what's this gap year? You know?
What's this gap year? Is it the brand? Is it Gap? Is it?
Exactly. So exactly. So that's really so they get freaked out a bit. They're like, oh, like we are not used to these gap years. It's a US concept. Like anyway, so I take a gap year, and basically you're like, okay, there's something here to do, and so let's try to build programs on the weekends. We go and build programs on the weekend. We already at like 100% filling rates. At the end of the year, we apply for like a competition that was run by MIT Media Lab with a major bank called Blue Master. We win the first prize, and we get like 35,000 USD in cash, no equity. And at the end of the year, I remember I had maybe 250 students. I was doing maybe like 100K in revenues. We have like 35K in our bank account in like USD.
Actually, I think that's a lot. Like 250 people at the end of the year.
Yeah.
First year of a school, like it's a school. Yeah. It's so hard to have 250 people. I'm really interested about this part.
Yeah.
You told me before the podcast that you basically bootstrapped the first 3 schools.
Yeah.
And I would like to double click on this bootstrapping phase.
Yeah.
How did you do? How did you go from 0 to 3 schools? I think you told me before the podcast that sometimes you were at like 1 month runaway, so 1 month from total like end of the company crash. How did you manage to bootstrap the company?
So it was so now that I think about it, like after doing this for a few years, like really understanding the unit cost structure of the company. So I was the only sales in the company. So I was doing the sales by myself. So I was selling to students. So students would typically apply. I would call them and sell them the training. I was doing the marketing myself. So I was doing content, recording. I was managing the space and the students and the experience, hiring the teacher and doing all the operations. I was doing the finance. So you have like 5 functions that I was doing all these functions myself. That required a lot of intensity, a lot of discipline. I mean, I remember I was 20 and I would wake up every day from 8 and finish at 8 and do this from Monday to Sunday. So I had a very, very intense early 20s actually. And I was doing all of these functions at the same time. And I was not getting a salary. So you're already like, basically you have an efficient cost structure. The marketing was very, very, we almost had no marketing budget. So it was very limited. But what we had is a lot of word of mouth and a lot of free PR because people really liked the story, you know, of a young founder that started a company. What we did is we invited really interesting speakers to come and speak at the schools. I can show you, like, we even had some Altman at some
at the school.
At the school, like through if you go to Gomycode talk with Sam Altman, as you could see here, and he joined basically through a video conference because he couldn't come to the space. But I told him if you can join through a video conference, because when I was in the US, like I'm friends with him on Facebook and we chat sometimes, and I was like, I started this in Tunis. Do you want to attend one of the lectures? But we had a lot of like Sam Altman, so we had a lot of great speakers. And a lot of people would know these people and be like, what the hell? Like, it's just like a small school in Tunis. They're inviting all of these crazy speakers. Like, so that created a lot of awareness, basically. Free marketing, free PR, free awareness. And the last thing, which is what really efficient about the model in education, which is really specific to education, is people pay before they join the training.
Yeah.
So that's a really uniqueness in education. So people are already upfronting you money and cash, and you're not paying cost. So you could collect a lot of cash, and after the cost will be deferred over a period of time. Right. And that's a really advantage in the models because you can collect cash, you can reuse that cash to pay your suppliers and pay the rent and the teachers and pay everyone. So you didn't necessarily need a lot of cash at first to start once you're doing sales, you know. But I mean, we clearly didn't at one space like this is what we did. We basically collect cash, we reallocate, we keep a very efficient cost structure. I was doing everything. Would just hire teachers when we need teachers. And the last thing that I did really well, I think, is when I started, I really hired a set of people that were really young, motivated, and tech savvies, you know. So the first teacher and the first coder were like really smart engineer, you know. So they were not like managers, they were like engineers, they were coders. Like everyone in the team were like a coder basically, or an engineer, or like a software developer. And it was like at some point, like the first 2 years, we were 100% developers team running the whole thing. We had no sales, no marketing, no business, it was only coders basically. And the focus and intensity was all around the content, the platform, the learning. So that's where we typically spend a lot of time. And all the rest I would do by myself and like try to be efficient with it.
So basically, it was the learning platform that you used during the lessons, right?
Exactly, correct.
Okay.
So yeah, go ahead.
So you managed to do this in you said 2 years, right? I think this bootstrapping of 3 schools. The 3 schools were in Tunis, right?
3 years actually.
3 years.
So we bootstrapped between 2017 till 2020 actually.
And in 2020, you had 3 schools in Tunis.
So we had 3 schools in Tunisia. So one in Tunis, one in Sousse, one in Sfax. So the 3 biggest regions of the country. I guess so. The MIT grant really helped us to like really go and expand and test. But a bit we were really underwater. I remember always having like 1 month of runaway basically, and we had to generate months. So what that really pushed us is basically to launch sessions every month. Because when we started, we would launch programs every 3 or 4 months. But when you do that, you have 4 entry points of revenue per year, you know. Like if you only launch every 4 months, you only have income coming to you every 4 months or 3 months.
Yeah.
And that was really short. So what we did is we decided to launch every month basically. And that's how we would have recurrency on revenue every month basically. And that really helped the treasury and all that. But that required a lot of cash basically. And specifically when we opened Sousse and Sfax, we did some capex like on tables, chairs, and that costed money. And so we couldn't do it basically with 3 spaces. Like we had to fundraise. And I remember having month or 2 month maximum always in the bank account. And one time we didn't have money actually. And I mean, my brother had to put all of his savings basically in the company. Like he goes from savings of 7 years of work to like 0 basically, because he had to put all of his money.
How is it to launch and to build a company with your brother?
Very challenging. Very challenging because I mean clearly in a work environment there's a lot of brutal honesty, and it can be brutal, you know, because the goal is to seek the truth in a company. And I always say the exercise of building a company is the exercise of being it's the exercise of being either like very scientific and very rational in what you do, and that requires like seeking truth, and that requires like, you know, being brutally honest sometimes, and it's a very rational exercise, you know.
When you're into business and entrepreneurship, you're always looking for new ideas and trying to stay up to date with the latest companies launching. We just released our brand new list of Moroccan startups you can't miss in 2025. We've gathered dozens of startups from across different industries. So whether you're an entrepreneur looking for inspiration or simply curious to know the most exciting startups, this one's for you. You'll find the link to the list in the podcast description. Check it out and let us know if we forgot any startup. The link is right below this video. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Can we like double click on this? It's so interesting. I agree that like sometimes it's hard to see the reality, and we have so many reasons to not see the reality in a company. To see it better, to focus on things that maybe we prefer to do, to go in a easier direction. Can you expand more on what you say about like why it's so important to be rational, and how do you apply this?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people come with a lot of bias from the past, basically, when they start companies or they come from other companies. People tend to have or build an opinion based on their historical kind of achievements or experience, and when they do that, they build some bias. So they come with a lot of predetermined ideas on how things are done or how things are run or like how, and that's not necessarily always a good exercise or a good thing. Of course, you would appreciate experience and knowledge but the goal should be to seek truth and to have a truth-seeking culture and not just an experience-driven culture, And a lot of things that we did at Gomycode was really not to convey the traditional way of doing things, but to look at how can we do things in a very different way. Like, for example, if you look at traditional training centers in Tunis, poorly managed, they had no CRM systems, they were not treated as a serious business, they were not necessarily a luxury or a premium or a VIP service. Training centers, the image of a training center is like 2-3 rooms.
Not good. Yeah.
It's not good, basically. And we took this model that is a simple model, and we really did it really seriously. Like, we really gave it the right tools, infrastructure, planning, organization, and I think so I think that's really important, basically. And I mean, when you work with your brother, I mean, you tend to clash, basically. I think for me specifically, the hardest exercise is that people are different, right? So we have different working methods. We have different. So we both have the same moral values because we come from the same family. So that's good. But in terms of decision making, we can have different ways and frameworks to make decisions. Mm-hmm. And we can have different triggers also and different priorities. And just aligning on the decision making and the priorities, it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of clashing, it takes a lot of honesty, it's a very, very hard exercise to do with a family member. And I mean, the family environment is a safe environment, typically. Like the best thing that you can ask for a family is safety, and you would want your family to accept you the very same way you are, right? So that's, I mean, for me, the family role is really to acceptance. It's all about acceptance. Wherever you are, we're going to accept you and we're going to have a place for you in a family. In a work culture environment is really different. It's about excellence. It's about quality. It's about operational efficiency. It's about rational thinking. And it's not just about acceptance, So it's a very different, and to make a difference between a work environment and a culture like a family work environment, it requires a lot of work. And also the culture we wanted, it's not a family business culture. So we didn't want like a family business where the decision making is driven by like a family kind of like philosophy or ties no, I mean, we wanted to be like co-founder, and we have investors and we have a team and like everyone is on board,
Yeah.
It's not a 2-people company. But I mean, overall, like we get along very well, me and my brother, and like we just learned how to work together. And I mean, it makes sense, to think about it, like why you see a lot of co-founders that are brothers, because simply you have a foundation that is relatively the same, at the end of
you have a lot of trust and a lot of alignment, like built-in alignment in terms of values and principles.
Yeah.
Let's go to the scaling part. So basically, from 2017, 2020, you go from 0 to 3 schools, bootstrapped with a grant, but it's mostly bootstrapped because it was not a lot of money. And from 2020 to now, so today you're in 35 cities, 8 countries. I saw a map with Tunisia, Senegal, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria. I'm forgetting like 1 or 2 countries, Nigeria. Kenya, and maybe another country. So basically, you go from 0 to 35 cities and 8 countries. And also, I know that, and a lot, I never launched an education company, but I heard that education is a game where scaling is very hard.
Yeah.
So what did you learn, and can you tell us more about this scaling phase? How did you go from 3 to 35 cities?
Yeah, I mean, so the expansion story is really like it's a really important story in the history of the company, and we still till this day learning from it, and like we're still learning and applying the learning and knowledge that we have on expansion and on like growing the business of education. But basically, when we did 3 years in bootstrapping, we raised our first pre-series A. With that first pre-series A, we form a first board basically of directors. We have a first investors. We raised 650,000 USD. I think half of it was in dinars, the other half was in foreign currency in USD. And with our investors, we really started thinking, we were like, okay, Tunisia is a relatively like a smaller market. What would give the company like a really important exposure is to go and like really try to replicate what we did in Tunisia in a different country. But we didn't have enough cash at that time. So we were like, we will do it in a way that is cash efficient. So no CapEx, for example, no investment on infrastructure. We're not going to have senior managers. We're going to hire junior people that are really motivated. You know, just like I did it in Tunisia, no cost structure, no payroll. We find someone very motivated in a country. We find a co-working space and we launch and test. So we did that in Algeria. We did that in Senegal. We did that in Côte d'Ivoire. We did that in like 4 countries. And we go suddenly from 0 to like 15, 20 students per country, you know, like, and we started seeing some kind of growth. And at the same time, we're like refining the playbook, the platform, like it's all like building blocks for us. A lot of things are breaking, and like it seemed like an impossible mission, because when we go to a country, we open a company, like a subsidiary, we open a bank account. So trying to figure all of that admin work is such a hustle and like so much work, you know? And we do that basically, and we get to 9 spaces, basically from 3 to 9 spaces. And after we basically end up like meeting a lot of investors. One of the investors were African Invest, and they're leading a Pan-African fund. They have an innovation fund, and they're like, this is in our mandate. We start talking to them. They're really interested in the company. And they decide to move. They share with us term sheets, and we basically build a table of like a round table of investors. And we managed to attract other investors. Like we met all the way, like Proparco, like Wamda Capital, like Lunch Africa, like Fondation Botnar. And we have all the angel investors also around the table, like Khad Halivi, Hazem Ben Ghessan, Dalit Kilani, an amazing list of Tunisian founders, diaspora, that built great companies abroad. One of them actually announced a 2 billion fund recently in the Middle East. I don't know if you heard about, called Hazem Ben Ghessan. He's our 4th biggest investor, actually, that supported the company from the Series A stage. And with that fund, basically the idea was a very different time period. So it was in 2022. So the sentiment on 2022 was growth. So it was a very different period from the period we are in right now.
Okay, so it was 2022, but like during the year there was a shift. So it was pre-shift, let's say,
it was
right?
Exactly.
It was more in the 2021 mentality than 2022.
Yeah, so it was more in the 2021, early 2022 mentality.
So
Exactly.
growth. Maybe you're not rentable. How do you say, like profitable? Maybe you're not profitable, but you're growing. You're a startup. It's okay. You can raise funds.
Yeah, so with the board, we meet all, and we've just raised a 7 million round at that time. And still now it's a big amount of tickets for us. It's a lot of money. And we were like, okay, let's go from 9 to 40 in the next 2 years. And okay, I mean, we try to rationalize the exercise. We try to be like, okay, every country, we divided countries by cities, and we tried to do like some kind of like mapping of all the possible locations that we could deploy, and we build this playbook on how we deploy the spaces. Then we look for the spaces, and like we basically, what we do is we hired like 40 city launchers. We had this function called city launcher, where we hire a city launcher and we give them a playbook, a budget, and we ask them to go and launch the space. And we did that basically. We did that until we had 44 spaces. So that was a very, very intense period of time, 2023 and 2024, basically.
So each place you have to like create the company, all the admin stuff, but you also have to find someone and have a physical space also.
Find someone, find a physical space, build the furniture, hire the team for the space, launch the marketing for that space. And we did that basically. We did it until 44, and at 44 we were like, we can't, like, let's stop. Like it's becoming like really hard to manage the basically it became really hard to manage the cash situation, because I mean you go from like, basically think about it, I mean you have 44 locations. If you're burning like 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 USD per location, so I mean we had a big cash burn basically, and we were cash burning a lot actually. I remember the cash burn was like in the 350,000 USD per month, basically around that.
Wow.
At some point, yeah. I mean it's really that because to think about the model today, you have fixed cost basically. When you open a school, you're paying rent, you're paying salaries.
Yeah.
But the school is not making profits yet. It takes the school 6 months to 12 months to 16 months to reach some levels of profitability. And during that time, you have rent you need to pay, you have costs, you have salaries, and we're doing that at the same time in many places. So we're just burning money until the schools are becoming profitable, you know? So that requires a lot of cash, basically. And that's what we did, basically. So we did a big wave of expansion. We looked at the schools, basically, after 6 months, 12 months, 16 months. And we kept the most profitable schools. The schools that did not get profitability, we stopped them. And we readjusted the whole size of the company.
Okay.
And now it's like 30, we stabilized at 35, and like schools are profitable. And the consolidated countries of the schools, the consolidated countries is profitable, you know? So we went from a very negative countries, early the expansion, to like profitable countries later on. And that's where
was it also like a way to find the best, let's say, markets for your specific business, or no? Like, do you say that maybe you had to go to these places that you closed to find that other ones are more profitable or best suited for what you do?
So what do you mean? If you can explain more.
I mean that you closed some places.
Yeah.
And did you have to go to these places? And was it like a way to have information about the fact that maybe this city is not a good place to open a school because it's not the right market for you?
Yeah.
Was it a way to find this information?
Yeah. So it's a really complex question to answer, because the reason why we would close a school is not a very we try to rationalize the reason, but it's not a very firm reason. But I mean, it's a financial reason. But for example, one of the reasons is we could have made a wrong decision on the place. We put the school in the wrong road, for example, or like the school had no visibility. The second wrong decision was really about hiring a wrong space manager for the school. We hired a really bad person to manage the school. A third decision is we didn't do enough marketing to market the school. A fourth thing, which is already there is no market for what we do in that specific city. So it was a lot of reasons, basically, why would
maybe it was timing. I agree. Like there are so many variables.
We did it also in a systemic way. For example, we looked at Yaba. And in Yaba, we like divided the city by like 4 or 5 big regions. We were like, okay, this is Lagos. Let's try to divide. So what we did is basically the playbook approach that we had is when we go to a country, we open a flagship space, a big space in the center, in the most dense city. In Casablanca, it's in the big avenue in Zaraftouni. Yeah, in Zaraftouni. Yeah. or in so that was in Zartouni, you know, like it's in the really in the center. In Tunis, it was in Lake One, or like in Lagos, it was in Yaba. And for a year, we have a lot of students coming to that big flagship space. And what we did is we started looking at like where the students are coming from all over the city. And based on that, we built clusters. And we tried to correlate those clusters to the big regions of the city. So we looked at, for example, Lagos. When you look at Lagos, you have Yaba, you have Ikoyi, you have Lekki, you have Ikeja. You divide Lagos eventually by 4, 5 big spots. Same for Casablanca. You have Zartouni, you have downtown, you have the center, you have Ma'arif, you have. So you divide the city by like 4 or 5 regions that are big clusters. And we put a school at every cluster. And I mean, so it's a bit like we really pushed the exercise. A city like Tunisia, you put like 7 schools. Like we really have like Gomycode at every neighborhood. We didn't typically do the exercise of like, okay, we'll be there, market enough big in that city basically to absorb the school. So that was one of the reasons why I think we closed few schools, is because the market is too small in that in few regions. But that's the exercise that we did. And I think the good thing that comes from this is the playbook. We have a stronger sense of playbook. We know now how to build the school, how to deploy the school, where to do it, how to do it. And we refine that playbook. And I think it's a big learning basically for us. And it's really like the exercise basically, you know.
Okay, that's very interesting. And like and now you're like you reached profitability, so it's so interesting to see how you went from there to this. The other thing is that
another point, Mohammed, at that point also to factor like in our board we had like few investors also that really challenged this expansion. And you know, for example, we had like one of the early investors at Uber. So that inspired basically the story of hiring city lunchers and lunching in cities, because Uber had the same approach of city lunchers.
Yeah.
So it's a very complex. It's not like it's not necessarily systematic on how we reach this growth. It really comes from a lot of like conversations and thoughts and decisions that we had with the board, with our investors, advisors, with the team, and like eventually it gave this thinking. But overall, I think it was a very important exercise, and much of it was driven by me and Amin. We were like, okay, we don't see models that are regional. Like, you know, you have a player in Casablanca, a player in Tunis, player in Lagos, but you don't see regional edtech platforms. Like, it's really hard to see like a company that expanded in 8 countries in Africa that is doing education. I haven't seen anyone actually till this day.
Me neither. Yeah. The other thing is the raising part, the raising funds. You raised more than $10 million for Gomycode. We hear a lot that it's hard to build startups in Africa, and one of the reasons that we hear is due to funding, lack of funding, or it's hard to raise. Can you share what you learned about fundraising in this specific setup, which is Africa and startups?
Yeah, I mean, we did 3 financing rounds basically. We did a pre-Series A, Series A, and a pre-Series B, raised so far in the 10 million. We exited like few investors like around $1 million basically, and we actually raising our Series B, so it's we're still raising it until this day. Basically, eventually this year we will start raising our Series B for next year. I mean, education generally speaking is underfunded in Africa. It's only like it's like in the 1% of 1.5% of VC funding in the continent. So I mean, there's VC funding is like underfunding education. I mean, I also like from a founder-led perspective, you have less founders building for education, generally speaking.
Yeah.
We live in a very defragmented market, a defragmented Africa. That makes it really hard to build for education. Because when you build education, you don't build for one country. We're not like India, you build for one country and like you have that scale. No, you build for like 8 different countries, 8 different payment gateways, 8 different cultures, laws, regulations. And that's really relevant in education because you need to really localize a lot of the business. So it's a really, really hard actually to build for education in Africa. I think investors haven't experienced it yet really interesting returns on their investment in the continent, aside from PEs and like big groups or family offices investing in traditional education like honoris, or we don't have yet the narrative of an edtech that made it. Maybe except one company called Go One in South Africa, but that was more like a SaaS for education, targeting the African market, but more like a global market. And basically for us, we did the pre-series A. When we did the pre-series A, we were doing $500,000 in revenues. So we only raised when we were doing $500,000 in revenues. And we only did the series A when we were doing 1.8 million of revenues.
Yeah.
So we were already making revenues to be able to fundraise. And this is what I tell to a lot of young founders and like people who are doing education, is that we didn't raise like, a 7 million round or like a $500,000 round from like nothing. When we did fundraise, we were already doing like, $500,000 in revenues and 1.7 million in revenues. And you know what, with that $500,000 of revenues, we go from $500,000 to 1.7 million, in like a year or 2 years. And that's really how investors, they look at it. They look at your capacity to generate revenue based on every single money that you raised. So if you raised $500,000, how much you would get with that $500,000 in terms of revenue in the next year, 2 years. And based on the trajectory, you can fundraise the next round and you can fundraise the next. And I guess what really helped at Gomycode is we had like two things that really made the company stand out in terms of education. The regional aspect is a very complex, but it's the only reason why we fundraise because we operate in few countries.
Yeah.
If you just stayed a Tunisian company, we would have never fundraised. And actually, for investors,
because your opportunity is not so big, so you have to be.
And yes, and we could have also operated a very profitable Tunisian company, but not interesting to like investors, So, and that's a choice that you will make as a founder at some point,
Was it a question for you or not?
It was, because me and Amin, we were like, okay, we have a business that is making $500,000 in Tunisia and profitable. Why should we fundraise? We just can live good lives and not go through all of this, like high risk and like complexity and investors to manage. And so it's really a choice that we need to make at some point. And me and Amin, we decided to we want to build a Pan-African company. We want to bring everyone on the board, and even we go big or we go home.
Yeah,
that was the idea. And we're still on the boat till this day. We're still trying to build the model and grow the company. But yeah, I mean, so the first is really the notion of multi-countries that really help the company. If you stay if you're like an edtech and you're only in the Moroccan market, great, but you won't be able to attract enough capital, just in the Moroccan market. At some point, you need to go to other markets. It's very, very important to have this regional. It doesn't necessarily need to be 7 countries. Like if you ask me again, Mohammed, how would you do it? I'll do it slower in terms of countries. I would go to 3 or 4 countries, after go 7 countries.
You would go deeper in each country?
I would go maybe deeper in every country. I'll take my time more. Instead of taking 2 years to do 40 spaces, I'll take 4 years maybe. So I'll add 10 spaces every year. And like, if you want to preserve cash speaking, and if you want to, be more disciplined around finance and like building a team and all of that. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which is the absolute hard truth, is that you don't fundraise from someone you don't know. Fundraising requires relationship building. And that's the only way to fundraise, is to build a sense of relationship with the investor you're raising from. There's a great article by Matt Mockery called The Relationship Method that everyone should read, actually.
Okay.
This relationship method tells that you actually, like, many of our investors and you for a few years before they even invested. Like, actually, most of our investors I met for the first time. They didn't invest the first time I met them, but I kept a relationship with them. I kept sending them updates, meeting them, checking with them, catching up with them, knowing them, having a sense of relationship with them, until the right time came and we were at the right traction. That's when they invested. So I mean, that's why it's really, really important to have a longer term view on investors. And when you meet investors, it doesn't need to be driven by the next week or next month or next year.
Yeah, and that's actually the worst thing, like if it's driven
Yes.
by next week.
Yeah. So, I mean, so that's really important, actually. And I was lucky enough to, like, okay, meet a lot of interesting people. I guess the project attracted a lot of interesting investors, and it was at early stage. So there was not a lot of startups like now. And I built a lot of relationships with a lot of these people, and like it really supported the company eventually. Actually, Matt Mockery have an amazing guide that everyone should check. It's called Matt Mockery, the CEO guide. I mean, most of the it's called the Great CEO Within. Most of the fundraising things that I really learned from the Mockery guide. It's an amazing guide, basically on fundraising. So that's the second thing. The third thing would be basically to fundraise when you have. So, I mean, the first point is really on traction. So we were at revenue level that are really respectable and like strong, and really we had some maturity in terms of numbers, like, and we had some initial understanding of the units of the company, like the CAC, the revenue, the CPL, the first level margin, second level margin. So we had a lot of understanding on the units of the company, and we had revenue. The second one is we build relationship with a lot of investors, and we know them, and we send them updates, and we catch up, and we connect with them, and we try to like share with them the progress and the problem that we have. And the third thing, which is for me is really important, is to really have a strong story and strong way to, like, a story with a strong conviction and ambition, basically. And it's very, very important actually to have a clear articulation on the mission statement, like and mission statement is the word today is X, with my vision the word is Y, basically. So the mission, it's very simple. Like the way to articulate a mission or vision is the word today is X, with my vision the word is Y. Like, you know, so today the word is not connected. With Facebook the word is connected. So it's very important to have
The first sentence includes kind of a problem and also the current situation.
Yes, correct, exact. And that really, I mean, for me, like, I mean, I don't know how, but like, even when I was 21, I had very articulate the vision and mission on like what the company is doing. The word today is this, and this is what we want to do. And I kept saying this to everyone and telling this to everyone, and like to teams, to investors, and that's quite important actually when you have a strong story to tell, basically. And my story really helped actually. This mine and Amin's story together really helped bring a lot of people around the company and around the project. So
okay.
But after, I mean, investors, they like to see also like, you know, growth and like trajectory. It's important to have growth of the company, especially with VC. They're gonna look at growth, because I mean, so the typical exercise today to invest in a company, you look at the revenue top line. You use multiples to value the company. If the company is making 1 million in revenues, you use X6, X7, 8, depending on the industry, on the sector, on the growth rates. If you're growing 600%, like I'm doing SaaS AI, you can get 20 multiple, you know. If you're like in a service, education, B2C, it's like 7, 8, 6, depending on the company. So that's really the typical exercise. Now, to have better valuation, better chances, growth really matters. The sector, the market, the audience, the investors, all of it, and it's a negotiation exercise after. But
we spoke about we talked about investment, exits, and startups in Africa, and I think the biggest success in Africa in the AI startup space, and maybe in this one of the biggest successes in startup spaces in general in Africa, is Instadeep, the company founded by Karim Beguir, which is who is a founder from Tunisia and built this insane company called Instadeep. And actually, you partnered with the so Gomycode partnered with Instadeep, and you launched Go My Teacher. And it's what I saw is that it's an AI assistant for teachers. And we're hearing some things about the fact that maybe AI can bring things for students, maybe it can help teachers. Can you tell me a little bit about this this partnership with the Instadeep, and why can it and how can it bring personalized learning?
So we are launching the early access, the beta version of Go My Teacher, because initially it was a closed version, but this week anyone from the internet can open gomyteacher.com and get an early access and get access directly and start testing the app. And we have a pretty mature version of the app, so it's perfect timing. But so on the idea basically of Go My Teacher, and like, so we're very lucky and privileged to have Karim as an investor, backer, and like he's also in the board of Gomycode. And Karim's story is quite important for a lot of young people and quite impressive actually. It's a story of a Tunisian guy, started from Tatooine, moved to Tunis, built an AI company, moved to London, and sold it for BioNTech for 750 million USD, and that's really inspiring. And with Karim basically, and the thinking process we had with Gomycode is, we basically have 1,000 teachers today at Gomycode. So teachers are Gomycode and what we provide today, and we're not simply a content company, we're a teacher company. So when people buy a Gomycode training, they expect a good teacher, and the teacher is the most important component of the experience. It's more important than the space, actually historically, we always say this in our families and in our environment. Like, if you have a good teacher, that's the only thing that you need. Even if you go to a public school, or like, you don't need a table, you don't need a chair, if you have a good teacher, that's the most important thing. Like, a teacher can really significantly impact and also the teacher is the one of the biggest costs when you look at the unit business structure, unit cost of a business in education. It's typically between 30 to 60%. So today, companies in education and different organizations in education give up to 60% of their money to teachers. And with Karim, we were like, okay, we want this unit structure. We want this, we want our 1,000 teachers to be as efficient as possible in terms of quality, speed, and in terms of cost also. And what we started doing is basically, we were like, okay, the mission of the company is to make education affordable and accessible. So price-wise, we want to make education affordable. If we want to make education affordable, we want to really, really have a stronger unit structure on the teachers, but also we can't lose on quality. We need to have good quality teachers and good quality feedback. So we started looking at what the teachers are doing today. So teachers today spend 30% of their time doing grading for assignment, projects, essays, exercises, tests. They're doing a good 30% of their time creating content, exercises, slides, presentations, and only doing like maybe 50% of their time face-to-face, delivering lectures, interacting with students. So half of the time of the teachers today is a lot of back office work that is not face-to-face delivery with the students. And we know that in the model, the more time teachers they spend with the students doing face-to-face, the more impact on the students, basically. So we were like, okay, if we manage to use AI and LLMs to automate the grading, to automate a lot of lesson plan, exercise generation, and if we take this 40-50% time and make it only 10%, that teachers can spend more time with their students, but also have a better quality content, a better quality feedback, there is a massive gain here to do. So we built Go My Teacher basically, and it's a tool that can automate a lot of grading and feedback and generate content and lesson and exercises. What's really interesting about this product is that we call 20-80% rule basically. So the AI is doing 80% of the job and the teacher is doing 20%. So the teacher is still validating the answers, validating the content, proofreading. So we're not talking about fully autonomous systems. We're talking about a system that can generate an answer, can generate lesson content to the teacher. The teacher comes, reviews, and validate, and after validation...
So the final judgment is always the teacher.
The final judgment is always the teacher, exact. Okay. And we integrated this at Gomycode, and it worked very well. And we were like, okay, this works at Gomycode, and we built a very interesting technology. Let's build a standalone app. I mean, we're an education company. We're not a SaaS company, clearly. Like, our focus is, we train people. We're not a SaaS builder. But the impact that we saw at Gomycode was really significant. We have systems today that grade more than 5,000 projects per month. And there was a massive gain on like productivity and time and quality. And we were like, okay, this can be very relevant to other schools, universities, institutions. So we built a standalone app called Go My Teacher. And it's really a different business from what...
Do you see it like a separate company, or it's a different product of Gomycode?
Yeah, this is what we're really thinking about this right now. Like it's a very different unit structure, really different rational, different team, different everything from the company. So we're thinking about this as of now. But as of now, it's part of Gomycode. So the IP, the brand, everything is owned by Gomycode. But we're really still thinking about how to structure this actually. Okay. But we have conviction by the solution and the technology and the problem actually. And again, it's still a very early stage. Even if you look what's happening worldwide, it's still very new, all of this. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's a new space and very exciting.
It's a very new space.
We talked about Instadeep, a great company. Like Gomycode is also a really like a great company. And how did you see the tech space evolve in Tunisia? How do you see it today? You saw this space for 10 years or 8 years. What's your views on this?
Yeah, we in Tunisia we had a very progressive Startup Act framework, very early, like one of the first Startup Act frameworks in Africa, back in 2018, 2019. I think there is a natural evolution of that framework. I think there is a second framework or third framework that is cooking right now that will enable founders to operate more internationally. So I still think that still limits from a regulation law standpoint that needs to be changed and improved, or completely we don't need them basically for founders to operate. From a founding story, the models that seems to work the most right now are stories of either you have the Expensias and Instadeeps where they have their cost product development structure in Tunisia, but they have their market in Europe. And that's Expensia, that's Instadeep, so there's strong value into building in Tunisia and delivering in Europe. So building sales capacity in Europe, but having a product structure in Tunisia, and that can be very efficient because in Tunisia you can hire a very talented engineer for in terms of quality for a very, very affordable price point and cost point. So Tunisia can be really a hub in that sense of AI and deep tech and technology, and you have founders that are able today of selling to the European market. The other stories are the Gomycode stories, where Tunisia is a playground, where you build and test in Tunis, and once you have a model, you go and try to replicate that model in other African countries. Yeah. Now, we haven't seen a lot of Expensias and Instadeeps and Gomycodes yet, but what it seems like the market is there's a lot of startups in Tunisia, but the initial move right now is to go raise a Series A, go expand in. You don't have yet a lot of startups, but I think a lot of companies are in the cooking, and there is a lot of companies, but a lot of them are still cooking. So that's what I would expect naturally in the next years and months, basically, to see more startups either expanding in Africa, replicating what they did in Tunisia, or going in Europe and building sales capacity and selling in Europe. I think that's
and building in Tunisia. Yeah, there are 2 or 3 subjects that I wanted to ask you and cover with you before we finish, like very different subjects from what we were talking about and Gomycode. First, you told me last time that you're into design. So you told me that you were building, or you started a design studio to make furniture and thinking about this and working about this with artists. Can you tell me more about this? How did it come and is it the same thing to design a product and a tech product and furniture? Like, tell me more about this.
Yeah, like this passion for me, like for design, is not a new thing. Like for me, when I started making games, I was doing a lot of design around games. So it's really started with video games. So I was also designing the games, and I was doing a lot of pixel art and pixel design when I was 15 and 16. So I was pretty much involved also in a lot of game design. So for me, this intersection of like design and code is a very, very exciting and interesting intersection. And it's always one thing when you code, and it's always another thing when you have a visual representation. It could be digital or physical. And for me, just coding felt limited. So I always wanted to like code, but also like design. So I can see things, you know, and like I can touch things and I can have tangible output of my product. And they're correlated in many ways because design is really creative problem solving and coding is creative problem solving. So you apply the same principle of thinking in many ways in design, you apply to code. For me, I don't necessarily separate. In my mind, they're not separated.
Yeah.
And actually, I do a lot of design at Gomycode. I design the schools, I design the logo, pretty much involved in the design aspect of Gomycode, the colors, the website, the platform, and all of that. So, building the schools and at Gomycode is basically one of the challenges. We were like, okay, we want to build really inspiring schools. So we want the schools to be really inspiring. It can be heavy machinery and heavy infrastructure because we're not an infrastructure business. But we want the schools to be really inspiring. So where students, they go to the schools, they're inspired and they're like, wow, this is cool, you know? So, and they want them to feel inspired. We want them to feel that it's a fun environment. So we would typically look at furniture in every city and we wouldn't find good furniture. Or we would find, but it's very expensive. And so you basically have two choices of furniture. You have like very high-end Italian brands that are very expensive. Or you have very local, but the local furniture is like the same for the last 40 years. And it's very Orientalist, inspired from Orientalist culture. And it's very like noisy furniture, let's say. It's very complex products. It's not simple products. So we started making our own furniture for the schools, actually. And we hired like an architect. And we designed the tables, we designed the chairs. I still don't know if it was a good thing to do, actually, because it took a lot of time. And basically we designed everything and would go and find local providers and we gave them the sketches, the designs, and we asked them to build the furniture of the schools. And doing that and working with an architect, I learned so much about furniture that I started in my free time experimenting around building different types of chairs and tables and lamps. And for me, it's a really interesting challenge because I mean, you use materials a lot. So you have multiple materials. It's interesting to learn about materials. And because you're also challenging the status quo. So when you design something and you take it to a provider or like a menuiserie or like someone to help you build they always get shocked because they're not used to making that thing. They're used to making the exact same thing. And for me, what I felt is that I felt the separation between designers, product designers, and builders. So and that inspired like a small idea to start like a small design studio where I find designers, product designers, I find local providers, and try to build a framework system for them to communicate together. And to build furniture that is design focused and centered. And I built this basically a small lab. I mean, I'm doing it for fun. It's not a series or anything, but I can share.
Yeah,
I can share with you where
we
we
have
are.
to see it.
Yeah, so I mean, we built very simple furniture, as you can see here. That is, I mean, it's impossible for you to find in the market here. Very functional, good materials products, and like could be lamps, could be chairs, could be tables.
Very nice, very simple.
Like mirror, like you can see the aesthetics and the like. If you want to buy like a wooden table that is not crazy expensive and like good wood and good materials and very simple, you're gonna struggle today in Tunis. You'd be surprised actually, or you find very expensive. So I mean, so that's the whole idea, is to build like a minimal, bold, and built to last product and focus on form, material, and feeling. And so no mass production, no excess. So every product we build like maybe 20 or 30 pieces, and it's just we sell out. And there's what we do is we also share the process, the design process of making these products, and we typically highlight the designer. So in this case, Céline worked on the designs. So the designs are all, and the research behind, and like how we build it, and like how did we get there, and we print the names of the people that build the furniture on the furniture. So you have the names of the people that actually build the tables and chair they printed on the tables and chair, and it's very experimental, way basically to like make and it's interesting because you have very young, cool designers working with like artisan that's been there for like 30, 40 years, that's been doing the same exact thing, and seeing them work together is quite challenging. It takes a lot of.
Very interesting, and like the furniture is very nice. I love the lamps. It's very, very nice.
Yeah. So I mean, it's also nice because it's good to like be able to make this kind of stuff and like give them to friends and experiment around them, and like, we're doing this for fun for now. It's just like a fun project that I enjoy doing, and I think I get to be really creative also around this project. And
it's so interesting that you wanted to build the furniture for Gomycode. Like it also shows like the level of detail while scaling Gomycode and building this infrastructure. You wanted it to be in a specific way. So it's interesting. Maybe the last thing, maybe, because we have to finish. You said before this call that you define yourself as a techno-optimist.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So I think there's basically, I mean, there's different views on like how people want to or choose to see technology, and like how technology is evolving. When I say technology, clearly the wave right now is the AI wave. And I choose to be or stay really highly optimistic about where the world is heading. And I really do believe that economic growth only happens when you have very smart people and creative people working together toward a really strong vision with a lot of backing and investment and support. And that's really why I said I'm technologically techno-optimist, because I'm really optimistic about the future of technology and the future and with the AI. And I think a lot of people are afraid, for example, about AI and the implication of AI. And I think there is a fair share why people would be afraid, but I think there'll be greater things to happen because of AI. I think also the market will readjust. We may overestimating what AI is capable of doing, or also underestimating, but I think it will be for the greater sake of society. So I mean, I'm very optimistic actually about the AI and application of AI, and I think the right thing to do is not to be an AI doomer, but is to be an AI enabler. And actually, there's a big notion right now. Basically, I saw this somewhere, and there's 3 futures of AI. So there's 3 futures of, and the path we choose determines our future basically. And it's really important that people adopt this notion. Like, it's very important. So there is a future where we co-pilot a model where humans and AI work together seamlessly, and we accept that reality. So AI collaboration. There's a path where it's unregulated, misused AI, leading to unpredictable outcomes. So that's AI chaos. And there's an AI doom, which is a model where it's a worst case scenario with catastrophic. And I think we're at an inflection point, and the decision we make today around ethics, access, and governance, we define whether AI become a force of empowerment or destruction. But I think the best way to look at this is AI collaboration. And technology collaboration, in a sense, I think it's the most sustainable. I mean,
how do you learn about this? Like about this and everything. Like, how do you learn new things and keep growing?
I think I have like a very well curated X account, like Twitter account.
Yeah.
With all the major VC people, major founder, major executives. I listen to a lot of podcasts. All in One podcast is great. I mean, it's full of people from the right but if you put the politics aside, and if you put their political agenda, I think you can learn so much actually about what's happening in the world. So important to be well informed, to follow the trends really closely. And like, for example, I attended in June, I attended 3 big events and I learned so much from them. Like the Viva Tech, the London EdTech Week, the London Tech Week. It's very important to be in tune and very important to talk to a lot of founders. I mean, you don't want to do this full time, obviously. So you don't want to be spending most of your time on this, but it's important to be in tune and follow what's happening. I find the Y Combinator till this day very relevant. Like they have a great YouTube channel. If you go to the Y Combinator YouTube account, you can see so much happening actually on their YouTube account. I read a lot of books, articles, obviously a way to learn. Almost like a lot of great people have a lot of blogs, like Sam Altman, like Paul Graham. Like it's really and they till this day they write essays, they share a lot of. It's also good to follow them on X and Twitter, and so the big US tech is very active on Twitter, not on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. So if you're not on Twitter, you won't be able to follow a lot of things. And yeah, I think it's important to follow the people working on the technologies. So it's really important. Like OpenAI, they have a lot of people at OpenAI themselves building the technology inside OpenAI, and they're all on Twitter, for example. So if you look at the Twitter, if you look at the OpenAI management team or super artificial intelligence team, and you look at their names and have to look at their names on X on Twitter.
Yeah, you can see what they post.
Same for Entropic, same for Perplexity, same for Lovable, for Replit, for all of these people. They share constantly updates, news, and I mean, I find that really a great way to stay in tune and
to learn. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes.
It was very interesting, and thank you for sharing all of this.
I hope
very interesting.
And
I'm sure it was.
I'm very reachable on my email. I have it on my website, and really great, Mohammed, to have a conversation with you, and really excited. I've been in the Next Wave podcast. Yeah.
Thank you, Yahya. It was really, really great to have you, and thank you again.
Merci beaucoup d'avoir écouté cet épisode jusqu'au bout. Si vous avez aimé cet épisode, partagez-le autour de vous, abonnez-vous à la chaîne. Et comme vous le savez, on est sur YouTube, mais aussi sur Spotify et Apple Podcasts. Donc partagez Next Wave autour de vous pour nous aider à faire connaître ces podcasts.